So to me, it felt a little bit like they'd discussed it beforehand and had decided to sort of stir things up a little bit to see if that would distract Max. What's your view on that?
Oh, David, it's a sad encounter. It shouldn't be happening. We shouldn't even be talking about it. We should be talking about the race. We should be talking about Carlos Sainz. We're talking about the season coming up and the new kids on the block and young Doohan and etc. George, Max, for Christ's sake, we don't need this. Go and shake hands, have a pint together, laugh about it, and let's move on. That's what I would say.
Yeah, wise words from Uncle EJ. Yeah, it all does feel a little bit, handbags at dawn. Hello and welcome to Formula for Success. I'm David Coulthard, and this week we are truly international. I'm speaking to you from the Maldives and coming to your ears live from Cape Town. Prepare yourself, it's Eddie Jordan.
The growler. I'm here, David. Yes, we're all in the Southern Hemisphere. We're I think we've emigrated out of the UK and Europe because the weather just got so ridiculously cold, and there's a better opportunity for us all to feel good here.
Well, that is indeed. I thought it's only a 4.5 hour flight from Abu Dhabi to the Maldives. This seemed like a sensible time to take a short break after what's been a long season. And I was expecting to see you in Abu Dhabi, EJ, but sadly you couldn't be there.
Well, yeah, we've kind of alluded to it, David, over the shows. Way back in March and April, was diagnosed with bladder and prostate cancer, and then it spread into the spine and the pelvis. So it was quite aggressive. And we've all heard about our wonderful friend Sir Chris Hoy, who's an absolute megastar, and he coming out and talking about illnesses such like what I've got. But he's a far younger man. But this is a little message for all the anchors and everybody listen to this. Don't waste or put it off. Go and get tested, because in life you've got chances. And there is so much medical advice out there and so many things that you can do to extend your lifetime. Go and do it. Don't be stupid. Don't be shy. It's not a shy thing. Look after your body, guys. David, sorry to interlude, but now we can go and talk about the Grand Prix. Yeah,
well, look, EJ, wise words, and you've had this personal experience. It's good to see you looking sharp, actually, considering the chemotherapy, and I'm sure that is not the work of a moment and not a pleasant experience. But anyway, great that you're sharing your experience with all our listeners.
Well, we'll move on, but yes, some very dark days in there, but we pulled out of it, thankfully. Yeah.
Would it be an opportune moment for me to remind you that you owe me 500 quid, or should I wait until after Christmas?
I think you better wait till I die. You have a better chance of getting it.
I wouldn't have expected any different.
I was told he was about to extend my life by at least another 10 years. I asked him how much did I owe him, and he said, I'll send you the bill. I said, Jesus, what have I let myself in for? Anyway, let's move on to the show. I'm sure the listeners don't want to hear about prostate cancers and robotic engineering and surgeries and stuff. David, this is serious. The Grand Prix,
it is.
24 races. My God, it was too long. Surely too long.
Well, 24 races, 6 sprint races all over the world. I've got to say, I did 16. And on top of that, obviously, I'm busy doing other things with Dayton and other business and what have you. But 16 felt about right. I take my hat off to all the team members who, don't travel around the world in the same comfort as you would. And 24 Grand Prix, they've definitely earned a break, haven't they?
Look, and the break is incredibly short, not like what we used to have, where it was always guaranteed to be over at the end of November, and it didn't start till March time, and then we were off to Australia. But David, just spare a thought. You're a father. I'm a father. I've got dozens of grandkids screaming around the place. Spare a thought for your family, because that is the most important thing in life. And for people who don't want to take time off or sabbaticals, or like you who can afford to only do 16 races, because for you to do 16 races means they have to find somebody else to the equal of you who's going to do the other 8. Now, that's not always going to be easy. So, because different opinions on how things work, how you put the tires on, how you do the tire change or whatever it is, these are all little factors that need to be considered. And I think it's very unfair. I think it's incredibly unfair on families, the children going up, people at school, the lack of ability to be able to put your child to bed at night. I mean, it's very tough. 24 races and the sprint races on top of that. It's just mad. It's just glorified greed, isn't it? It's greed. It's Liberty trying to make pots and pots of money. We shouldn't be doing that.
Well, I guess it's not just Liberty. In fairness, the teams, if you were still a team owner, you would be benefiting from that increased pot. If I understand the Concord agreement that Chase Carey, who's coming back as chairman, negotiated prior to taking a break from Formula One, it was more equitable. So would you not just be licking your chops if you were still a team owner?
David, money is money, and money in the team makes the team faster. There's absolutely no doubt about that. But at some stage, you need to draw a line, and you have to say, well, what is fair and reasonable? And I think 24 is no longer fair and reasonable. I think it's too much. By your own admission, if it was 18, 19 races, you probably would do the whole lot. But 24 is just pushing the boat too far out. And I think it deserves talking about. And I have a great philosophy in life. I have little quirks that I often think about in my mind. And I often say, less is more. And less is more in most cases. You look at the NFL in the States and you look at different sporting arenas about how you get to. Because what's going to happen is the smaller races are going to suffer. And the bigger races like Monza, Monaco, British Grand Prix, they're going to thrive. And they already are thriving. I mean, Silverstone, record-breaking figures this year, unbelievable. And the same applies to Monaco. And there will be, when there is national interest, of course, aside, I just feel that the magnetism and the draw to the big races will be greater and less so to the smaller races.
Yeah, I was pleasantly surprised, actually, just how many people were in Abu Dhabi. I thought that with the Drivers' Championship all wrapped up, then you might have seen a drop-off. I'm not sure from a corporate point of view, but certainly, that W Hotel that straddles the circuit, it was like a fashion zoo passing through the lobby. The paddock was busy. It still seemed that there was energy and appetite for Formula One. And although, as I say, the Drivers' Championship was wrapped up, it was a bit of drama there, getting the constructors put to bed.
But David, spare a moment that before Brazil, everyone expected it to go down to the wire. And people probably had pre-booked tickets and flights and hotels, otherwise they wouldn't have got in. Saying that, I think Abu Dhabi has hauled its way into the top 5. I really do. Because, when I'm talking to friends or colleagues, they will say, oh man, whatever else, Monaco, Silverstone, Abu Dhabi, and, Monza's too crazy, but we'll try something else. But Abu Dhabi is getting in there. I think Abu Dhabi has made the top 5. I don't know what your view is on that, but that's what I'm thinking.
Yeah, I personally enjoy the Grand Prix for a number of reasons. One, it's a state-of-the-art facility. I wouldn't say it was the top 5 of any driver's favourite track, but in terms of close-by airports, hotels all around the track, you can walk in and out of the circuit. There's a lot of wins as far as I'm concerned. And I like to keep a Grand Prix as simple as possible. That's the reason why, for more than a decade, I stayed in a motorhome at all the European races. Just couldn't be bothered with the hassle of checking into hotels and all the usual, can I help you with your baggage up to the room when you've managed to get it, 3,000 miles across the world. And then you feel that the last little bit, somebody has to come and show you how to switch the light switch on. So, I'm a bit plain vanilla in that respect. But yeah, that Grand Prix is definitely an event. And what a fitting place for them to have filmed the final sequence of the new Apple movie with Brad Pitt and his various other actors acting out the final result on the podium. So that's going to be spectacular.
That's what I'm saying to you. The ability of not having to get in a car to go to the track, for me, that's an absolute winner for sure. And staying in the W Hotel, Yes, I've had maybe 5 or 6 in a room there, and I'm sure the W Hotel won't want me to hear you saying that, but I'm sure, we've all done that. And no, David, I haven't ever slept with you in there, but I could do if you invite me, but nevertheless. But there's the most amazing golf course within a driver and 9-iron from the starting position, which a lot of the drivers play golf on the Thursday. It has a magic facility, and we mustn't forget Ferrari World is based there. So I think Abu Dhabi has got a lot going for it.
It has indeed. So what a cracking way to round off the season with a bit of off-track drama. And I'm talking, of course, about George Russell stepping up as a sort of paddock police against Max. He came out with a whole bunch of different quotes where Max had said that he'd lost all respect for George and that he could F off. George bit back with, I find it all quite ironic, seeing a Saturday night, he said he was going to purposely go out of his way to crash into me and put me on my effing head in the wall. He also went on to say, I'm not going to sit here and accept it. People have been bullied by Max for years now, and you can't question his driving abilities, but he cannot deal with adversity. And the quotes went on. And during that moment, which I believe was during the Mercedes media press pool that they do within the hospitality, sort of Toto came and stood beside him as if he was sort of, I endorse this message. So to me, it felt a little bit like they'd discussed it beforehand and had decided to sort of stir things up a little bit to see if that would distract Max. What's your view on that?
Oh, David, it's a sad encounter. It shouldn't be happening. We shouldn't even be talking about it. We should be talking about the race. We should be talking about Carlos Sainz. We're talking about the season coming up and the new kids on the block and young Doohan and etc. But anyway, we have to talk about the Max-George Russell affair because they live beside each other in Monaco, as indeed you do and I do. So we see them on fairly reasonable timings throughout the year. And here's my take. When I go to a steward's room and when I'm lying like hell to the steward in the hope that they might believe me or I have reasonably firm evidence, because very seldom did I ever have firm evidence, but I'd be bluffing my way through everything that I could think of. I would expect a driver to shut the fuck up. It's not his business. He's the driver. It's like as if it didn't matter, but he needs to be there because he's a witness. Now, why George needed to change that? Because that's the team principal's role or the team manager's role. And I'm sure Red Bull had it well in control. Obviously, George felt the need to speak. I'm not taking sides here because I'm sure Max did say that. But incidentally, I'm thinking back to my old days, Formula Ford, Formula 3, I mean, how many people did you tell you, if you fucking come near me, I'm going to turn you over? I mean, how many people have you said that to, David? Well, I've said it to hundreds. So it's a kind of a common language amongst racing drivers because it's a kind of, if cock and feathers and whatever it is. So you have to exert your position because you have to make sure that they know that you mean business if they're going to start dicking about. So here's what I would do. I thought it was a lovely story and it was a great opportunity, David. And I just give our anchors a little bit of an insider that's only people who know the drivers and are familiar with what's going on. But the drivers, you were right, Mercedes were late. So the drivers decided that they'd have their dinner, which is they normally do, and they'd play a little game on George because they knew he'd be late. So they all took their seats with one empty seat beside Max. So when George came in, he realized that he'd been gazumped, and George, not feeling the moment for jocular activities, decided, this is embarrassing. What the fuck do I do now? And what does he do? He goes, when there was a great opportunity to sit down and say, listen, Max, let's get over this. It's too much. No, he picks the chair up and he walks with the chair all the way around the table. Remember that there was 20-something drivers there, and goes and barges his way and muscles in beside Lewis. Now, I think that was an opportunity missed, and I would say reach out to George. George, Max, for Christ's sake, we don't need this. go and shake hands, have a pint together, laugh about it, and let's move on. That's what I would say.
Yeah, wise words from Uncle EJ. Yeah, it all does feel a little bit, handbags at dawn, but it is close to pantomime season, isn't it? So what more could we expect? Let's focus on the race then. It was, I think, an interesting race. It all seemed to come undone at the first corner.
David, it was fucking boring, for Christ's sake. You've got those glasses on again, haven't you? You've got the rose-tinted glasses on.
I thought there was a lot of interesting stuff.
Lando Norris was exactly what we said in the past. He is unbelievably fast. And when he doesn't and hasn't got contention at the first corner, man, you're never going to catch him. And no one caught him. He was absolutely brilliant. Brilliant. And congratulations to Zak Brown, incidentally, because I often slagged off Zak in the past, both in the media and on this podcast. Zak Brown, for me, deserves the number one slot for the surprise of the year, because what he did with McLaren was meteoric. Fantastic to win the championship from basically being dead last at the beginning of the year. I applaud him, his team, Andrea, but in particular, the Crown Prince. Salman, who believed in the team, he was isolated on his own and he kept loyal to the team. And that support, you can't believe how important that is.
Yeah, well, here to that. It was great to see not only the Crown Prince at the event with various other members of the Bahrain ruling family. There was also most of the OJs were there. Mansour, of course, the late, great Mansour OJ, being recognised for his commitment to McLaren over decades. And overall, it was just a really feel-good championship win. It was celebrated wonderfully in the back of the paddock, in the garage, and then they all loaded up onto aircraft and flew to Bahrain for a few hours, and then came back to Abu Dhabi to continue testing, which is pretty remarkable. But it was I thought it was a good news weekend in that respect. Oscar, obviously, a bit unfortunate with the coming together with Max. No question that Max was the one that slid into the other, so the penalty was applied. It was fairly clean around the rest of the track. A great performance in his final race for Ferrari from Carlos Sainz. And what a comeback from Lewis Hamilton, looking like he was on the ropes again in qualifying. Suddenly, he drove in an inspired way it was almost like a Hollywood finish in itself, round the outside of George Russell on the final lap.
Oh my God. I got such shit over me saying that I thought Lewis should not be going to Ferrari because of what he said. And when people say things like, I don't think I'm fast enough anymore, I mean, that registers in my head. Psychologically, I'm such a person. Yes, I believe in talent. Yes, I believe in performance. And yes, I believe in speed. But I'm a psychological person. I like to know what's going on inside that brain, because I think fundamentally what's going on in there very often gets replicated back in the job or the issues that you're doing. And whether that's driving a car, a truck, a train, a crane, it doesn't matter. It's how you approach the moment. Do I think that this time next year, if we're both happy and if the podcast survives that length and I survive that length, we will all say, Jesus, Lewis was amazing. Now, I hope I'm able to say that. But at the moment, I have to say Leclerc is quick. Make sure. But the way we saw Sainz, I mean, who in their right mind, John Alkin must have rocks in his head to have made that decision. And we'll come on to the things about various parts of the season as to who I think did what and not what. But, I will add to that later on, David. But I think that the Carlos Sainz, it was for the people, again, the anchors, we'll give them a little bit of insight. I'm particularly close to his father, Carlos Sr. And when I spoke to him to say what a great job he'd done, basically the whole of Ferrari, they were all upstairs, as you know, in the units where they have the hospitality, and Carlos Sr. was in tears. Carlos himself was in tears. He still doesn't quite understand why he was let go. And to be quite honest, neither do I.
Well, I guess the simple answer to that is that the draw of a 7-time world champion, the most successful driver in all the stats, poles, wins, all of the good things that you'd want beside your name. And let's remind ourselves that when the announcement came out that he was going to Ferrari, there was a little bump on the stock market as well. So just reflecting on Lewis's time at Mercedes, I said at the weekend on Channel 4 that in many ways this decision saves a problem for Mercedes because they've been able to celebrate their incredibly successful partnership. You know, all of Lewis's victories in Formula One have had Mercedes power. It was always going to come to an end at a certain point. And this now means it's kind of like, over to you, Ferrari. Good luck. And let's assume that Ferrari give him a winning Grand Prix car. As you've pointed out, Charles Leclerc, pretty quick. And that's not going to be a work of moments for him. So it's slightly confusing how what was been, by anyone's standards, a lackluster year, why he was able to and how he was able to put in such a strong performance on Sunday. It was almost like one final hurrah at Mercedes, and he sort of schooled George in how to drive a Grand Prix.
You have to say inside in your heart, when you think back to Silverstone, I mean, you said, for me, that was an amazing race. And one of the big races, you know, had it not been for other races, one in particular, I'd say that was my top race of the year. And it could still very well be, because I think the crowd, the atmosphere, here was an opportunity where there's absolutely, Nigel Mansell always said, the crowd is a couple of tenths here. And I'm sure you felt it too, as being British in Silverstone in front of the home crowd. Certainly Nigel felt it. Damon Hill has felt it. Jensen has felt it. And of course, Lewis has felt it. And I think that drove him on to win that Grand Prix. Would he have won it without being at Silverstone? Doubtful.
Okay. Bit of people power then, and it was impressive to see. Any other standouts over the weekend that you want to give a notice to, a mention to, and Abu Dhabi, any other drives that you're impressed with?
Don't know why, but I thought Gasly did another very good job, but I don't know how good that Alpine is. It'd be interesting to see how it performs next year. I've spoken to Flavio, I'm sure you did as well. He's up for it, and you know, it's interesting, people and sponsors that would normally come to me for a little bit of advice, suddenly Alpine are on the radar. You know, Dave Warren is there. He's left Formula E. Dave Warren, for those people out there, interestingly, at the Russian Moscow Olympics, he led at the bell with Steve, with Coe and Yvette. And so he's now heading up the marketing at Alpine. So a really, really top guy. Flavio is putting together a lot of good people. There's no doubt about that.
Yep, no, it definitely feels like that team has a face again, having been a bit faceless for a couple of seasons. But let's continue to watch their progress. Now, there's been a number of drivers already getting to experience their new teams. We've had Carlos Sainz out in the Williams. We had Ocon getting in the Haas as well. It feels like maybe a stopgap scenario for Carlos. I don't want to take anything away from Williams because I think their rebuilding and restructuring has been very impressive. But I just wonder if they will deliver him a car like the Ferrari in the time it might take for Lewis to finally hang up his boots.
Why are you suggesting that you might find Carlos going back there?
I think that I could see Carlos going back to Ferrari. We saw Kimi Räikkönen.
So can I. They absolutely adore him. And I think he left under such great terms. And, you know, to be a second on the podium and to be there, and Ferrari needed to really perform to give a fight to McLaren, you know, up to the last lap. You know, if anything happened to Lando, Ferrari were the champions. So when you get that kind of complications and the permutations that are often in there in terms of points, Carlos did an amazing job. And, you know, there are certain parts that you could look back and say, Carlos was dealt a rough hand. However, we both talked about Leclerc and we know how quick he is. But for sure, in my opinion, I think Carlos had the match of him.
Yeah, well, certainly had a very strong end to the season. So, yeah, they were a great pairing. I think we need to wrap it up on Abu Dhabi and move on to our end of season awards. Now, we don't need an Oscar for this because we've got the Jordans. So we're going to exactly the growlers. We're going to choose the winners who will take home absolutely nothing because you were in charge of the budget. But we're going to start with who we think was driver of the year, and we've got two suggestions here, which would be either Lando Norris or Max Verstappen.
Lando finished so strongly and such a brilliant job but at the end of the day, it's the number of points that wins the World Championship. And I think overall throughout the season, a very strong start, lackluster in the middle, or certain problems in the middle. But I think Brazil changed it all for him. He was so determined. That was one of the best drives I've ever seen in my entire life. It'll go down in my brain as something that I will always remember 2024 for. I felt that at the time, I said, that race puts Max above everybody else. And that's why I'm saying I'm going with Max Verstappen.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think driver of the year was definitely Max. But isn't it exciting going forward? He's got Lando there, who's discovered what it is to lead from the front. You've got Oscar Piastri, you've got Charles, you've got various other drivers that have shown themselves to be winners. George, of course. We've got the young talents coming in. I think 25 with relatively stable regulations.
Even Lewis could do it, Lewis could remember when he left McLaren and he went to Mercedes. God rest him, but Nicky Lauda and I, Nicky used to push me into McLaren to go and speak to Lewis to do all the little messaging for him because he couldn't do it because of a connection. He was so strongly involved with the Mercedes. Now, it was meteoric what he did at Mercedes. So who's to say that he's not going to find a new Lewis Hamilton inside his helmet and inside his suit? And he also could be up there, David. That's the intriguing thing about 25 because I think it has untold possibilities. And that's why it's going to be so good.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's move it to race of the year. And we've got three here. The Brazilian Grand Prix that you've already mentioned, the British Grand Prix, or the Hungarian Grand Prix, which was obviously that slightly controversial McLaren team order race, but an absolute statement of intent of their performance. So which one of those three would you say was the race of the year?
Well, probably gave the game away, didn't I? Because I thought, I've mentioned both of the ones that I think are in contention, which is the British Grand Prix. And I'd like to say the British Grand Prix because having gone there, been brought up, did most of my racing there, or based from there, the factory, the Formula One team. And I love the way Silverstone are moving forward as an entity. And we all thought that had problems. It's absolutely fabulous to see what's happening at Silverstone. But on pure excitement, I have to go with the Brazilian Grand Prix. It was just too electric, too much going on. The passing movers, the positioning on the track of Max and how he passed people reminded me of Ayrton Senna. He always was able to find the driest area, even though it didn't ever look as if it was the driest area. And I have to applaud the circuit for finishing and being able to complete the race because that was something else. Most other people would have red flagged it long before that. Yeah, I'm sorry, it's the Brazilian Grand Prix. Sorry, Silverstone.
Yeah, well, look, three great Grand Prix. I'm going to say Hungary for me really sort of struck a nerve in as much that it was reliving what I'd experienced when I was at McLaren and the difficulty when a team has to, and you've had that situation yourself as a team owner, when you have to what's the word? When you have to get involved in the running order of the two cars. So I really felt that was a race that I could explain from what it was like as a driver to be asked or to be told to move over and to do the right thing for the team. So that from a commentary point of view is where I felt sort of most engaged. Best newcomer. We've got just two names here. There were more, but because we had Jack Doohan make his debut, of course, in Abu Dhabi. But we've got Franco Colapinto and Oliver Bearman. Who really stood out for you out of those two?
To just step into a Ferrari with the amount of pressure amount of pressure from the team, the press, everything. Carlos Sainz in the hospital having his appendix out. I have to go for Oliver Behrman. My God, what he did in his first race to score points was, for me, blew me away. Absolutely. Yes, it'd be difficult for him going forward. I wish he probably hopes that he will get in a Ferrari at some stage. But Oliver, for me, you've made your mark up here in my mind. You'll be one I'll always be looking down the score sheet to see where you are.
Yeah, I think I would agree with that. To score points for two different teams in his debut year showed that age is not necessarily a gauge of performance, and the lack of Formula One experience didn't stop him from delivering exactly as he was expected to. I think actually all credit to Ferrari. Big move for them. You don't normally expect to have your race driver off having his appendix out, and normally you would expect a team like Ferrari to sort of take the safe road and go with someone with experience. But all credit to Fred Vasseur, the team principal, who ran his own junior team, ART, and for him it's like, right, who is the best person for the role rather than what's the biggest name for the role. The next one is the biggest surprise of the year, and I'm going with this because I never knew you were Adrian Newey's manager until you popped out of the silent assassin. You popped out of the undergrowth and stole Adrian away from Red Bull, and then did the deal of the century with Aston Martin. How on earth did you manage to keep that quiet, and how on earth did you manage to do that deal?
I do a lot of talking. I'm Irish. Irish people do a lot of talking. But when there's money involved and you need to keep your trap shut, you do, invariably. It's one of those things. Adrian was very united as well. I mean, we used to speak a lot with regards, don't come near me, don't say anything, don't do this, let's keep normal protocol going as we should. He played a great game. I mean, the most difficult, if I was to be very honest, in my lifetime, David, I haven't said this to many people, but in my lifetime, I've done some really, really scary deals, deals that have come off, some that happened. But I really believe the negotiations I had with Red Bull were of the finest and the best caliber. They were incredibly decent and proper people to deal with. They understood exactly the situation, why I was talking to them, and the position of Adrian having been there 18 years. He was a huge servant to them. He's won dozens and dozens and dozens of world championships there. But it was probably one of the greatest deals I've ever done in my life. Not financially, but mentally, I felt so great about how that's structured.
Yeah, no, it was definitely the deal of the century. And summing up the gift of the gab and the ability to make numbers out of nothing of the Irish. He hasn't won dozens and dozens of race world championships at Red Bull.
It sounds good, though, doesn't it? It sounds good.
It does.
He's won a lot more world championships than you and I have. So I think he's dozens and dozens.
Okay,
actually, it is dozens and dozens. It's 24, isn't it? Or 26. How many world championships has he won?
Yeah, but not at Red Bull, surely. Am I getting confused? Are you counting drivers and constructors?
You're correcting me. You're absolutely right. I take back what I said.
Okay. Right. The final one of our Jordan Awards, it's the FFS moment, the for fuck's sake moment of the year. So for me, I think the FFS moment of the year was Lewis signing to Ferrari. I just never saw that coming. What was your FFS moment of the year?
We're on the same page here, because my FFS is, I say to John Elkann, who's the chairman of that group, what the fuck was he thinking about in getting rid of Carlos when he had a very happy, friendly, structured team that knew how to work together? The drivers got on well together. Fred Vasseur had a real opportunity to bring this team great success. Now he has to start thinking about gelling and mending a way that he can get a new member of team, egos, everything involved. Lewis is a particularly nice person. I'm not sure there's many nicer people on the grid than Lewis Hamilton, so I don't think he'll have a problem there. However, my FFS goes to John Elkann of Ferrari for even signing off on that deal, it was absolutely suicidal to get rid of Carlos.
Yeah, well, time will tell whether your prediction is correct or not, or will Ferrari end up being the sort of re-energizing of the Lewis Hamilton of old, and he comes out and does a Nigel Mansell, wins his first ever Grand Prix for Ferrari, and then just becomes, an absolute legend within for the Tifosi. That would be a hell of a story, and that would be a great way to start the season, which will be in Melbourne in, about 94, 95 days from now, so not long.
I need a break, David. So
I need a break.
I would expect I will be fully recovered by then, and we'll do a lot more of these on a personal basis. I want to do Monaco in particular for the live podcast, Abu Dhabi, and even more. And the one at Silverstone, of course, we can't leave that one out because that was where it all started.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, EJ, it's been a pleasure as always. And to our anchors, that wraps up our time for today. Remember, you can get in touch with us on social media at F1 for Success and send your questions in to ffs@whisper.tv. Well, EJ, it's not quite Christmas, but go and give me one of your Christmas roars.
David, if I was close to you, I'd kiss you because I do love you. And I'd like you to stand up. Have you got budgie smugglers on, or no? What are you wearing?
I've got my boxer shorts on. Yeah, I'm in my hotel room.
Oh,
53-year-old ass.
You flash kid. No wonder that girl thinks you're still hot. Yeah, David. If I don't speak to you, have lots of fun in the Maldives. Hopefully we'll see lots of each other before Christmas. But my thoughts, my wishes for not just here, but the new year. To the anchors, guys, you've been fantastic. It's been meteoric as to what has happened this year. Unbelievable for racing point of view. And David, I've loved working with you.
I'm getting emotional now. I'm getting emotional. Oh my God, I'm dropping my mic and everything.
No, I'm not talking about illness, so I won't get emotional anymore. So from the growler himself, ladies and gentlemen,